Yes, hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. I am back. It was my birthday last week. Unfortunately, I was not here. I was too busy celebrating, having a couple of beers and all that. We're getting back into our divisional previews. This week, we have got the best division, and that is the NFC and AFC West. But first, let's play the video.
I just wanna rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes, it is the best two from the rewind. It is me and Lewis. Unfortunately, Hannah's not with us. She is somewhere on the M25. And for the people that live around London and know what the M25 is like, you completely sympathize with her and why she's not here right now. But yeah, like I said, it's me and Lewis. Lewis, how are you doing on this fine Monday evening?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. I'm very excited to talk about the NFC West, and I'm delighted that we've both got our jerseys on. For those watching, are your JJ Watt? Is that JJ Watt?
Yeah, man. JJ Watt, fellow Cardinal and Burnley owner, you know.
We're both wearing retired players' jerseys because I've got my old Todd Gurley jersey on.
Legend.
Although I will point out, I was actually just wearing this today. This wasn't specifically for the NFC West podcast. Normally, if I'm just bumming around the house for the day, I'll tend to have a jersey on. So it was more a happy coincidence than anything else.
I will be honest, I saw you in your jersey and forgot that I was going to put a jersey on. So I literally got changed about 5 minutes before we started recording this. And the only jersey I've got of current players is Kyler. The rest are all people who have left. I've got Patrick Peterson, JJ Watt, I've got DeAndre Hopkins, I've got Kyler Murray, and soon to be Marvin Harrison Jr.
I was going to say, how long is it going to be until you get your MHJ jersey?
Till I can convince my wife to allow me to spend the best part of £100 on an NFL jersey. You know, I probably should have done that for my birthday, but I forgot.
I was going to say, it's almost as if there was a big occasion just gone that you potentially could have asked for that for.
Yeah, probably should have used that, but I didn't. But oh well. Big news. We haven't got any big news. The big news is I'm 1 year older and still a prick.
I don't know how big news that is, Paul.
Mate, it's amazing news. It's the biggest of big news, you know. But yeah, there's not really much going on at this time of year. You know, we could talk about. I think there's a couple of people that haven't turned up to certain like training camps and stuff like this, but it's not really news that I'm worrying about or considering or taking on board or anything like that. So let's get straight into our main segment here, and we're going to start with I've just realised that I haven't changed it on the show sheet, but we're going to start with the AFC West. With this division, I really like this division. This division is made up of the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. But we're going to go straight in with the QBs here. Two teams in this division, to me, feel like they've got elite QBs, and two teams feel like they've got a massive question mark over their head. So, who are the QBs you think that are fantasy relevant in Las Vegas or Denver this season?
Yeah, I thought the way that you phrased this question was really interesting, because it's not just about. So whenever we've talked about the Steelers, when we did the AFC North preview show, we spoke about, who do you think starts, who do you think finishes the season, and I thought that's probably where we were going to end up going here, especially in Vegas. But when you're specifically talking about who are the quarterbacks that are going to be fantasy relevant between those two teams, I think the answer is probably no one. So we can start with Denver. It is pretty likely to me that Bo Nix comes in and starts day one. Obviously, he was drafted higher than we thought he would get drafted, even if he went as the QB5 off the board or QB6 off the board. No, QB6 off the board by that stage, wasn't it? So, he's clearly been brought in to start right away, and that's obviously aided by the fact that the quarterbacks behind him are Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. So it's not as if they've gone out of their way to surround him with, a Jacoby Brissett type or someone that can take the reins for a bit. Bo Nix is pretty pro ready. The weapons aren't as good as they were last season with Jerry Jeudy out the door. So it's not as if, where we look at some situations like in Chicago or in Minnesota that we go, yeah, it's a rookie quarterback. They don't tend to be relevant too early, but the weapons are really strong. For Bo Nix, it's Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, Troy Franklin, Tim Patrick, Marvin Mims, wide receiver, Adam Troutman, Greg Milsich. Like there's not, in terms of receiving talent, there's not a huge amount around him. So I can't see him being hugely fancy relevant year one. Then in Vegas, I am slightly interested in Minshew. There seems to be people talking as if there's going to be a quarterback competition. I don't think there is if you just follow the money. They paid Gardner Minshew more than they should have. I don't think that they should have offered him a contract at that level, even if it was only, it's 2 years, 25 million, which obviously isn't huge amounts for a quarterback, but it's still more than a rookie contract and more than I would have paid for him. But historically, he has been fantasy relevant-ish when he's been a starter. I think he's sort of the opposite to a lot of quarterbacks that you look at and go, they're a good player, but they're probably not going to be hugely fancy relevant. Gardner Minshew isn't a good player. He's not a good quarterback. But I think there's a good chance that he could be fancy relevant this season. And if you look at his history in the league, it was QB 21 last year, QB 22 in his rookie season. Obviously didn't play a huge amount the other few seasons. 2 finishes inside the top 10 last year, and then 5 finishes between QB 10 and QB 20. So that is, that's fine. That's doable. It's an okay QB 3. Aidan O'Connell, I don't think is the one. Gardner Minshew, I'm fine with as a QB 3 or 4, but he's very much a shit. I forgot to take a QB 3, and the options are running out now. Do I want to go with, Gardner Minshew? Do I want to go with Bo Nix? Do I want to go with Bryce Young? Do I want to go with Daniel Jones? Like, both of them are at that level of the board to me.
Yeah, I think Gardner Minshew may be somebody I'd probably target more in like best ball, because if you can get that week 10, that top 10 finish out of him a couple of weeks, at least in best ball he's probably going to fit into your team. Whereas if you play him in a normal redraft where you have to put the player in, trying to predict when he's going to have that top 10 week is going to be very difficult. But no, the reason I sort of like phrased the question like this was because I kind of know in my head that Gardner Minshew was going to be the guy in Vegas and Bo Nix was going to be the guy in Denver, whereas in Pittsburgh, I wanted to know who you thought, whether it was going to be Fields, whether it was going to be Wilson and stuff. I wanted to chat about the fact that I don't actually feel like either one of these are going to be QBs that I'm really going to be targeting. No. Maybe back end of the draft, I'd maybe target, but ultimately, if I've got 3 QBs on my team, I'd want like elite QB, potentially another elite QB, and maybe a solid QB2. If I could get them 3 in my team, I'm not that bothered with who else I'm getting on the season, And normally in sort of like redraft leagues, you've got quite a small bench, so you kind of don't want to take that up with 2 starting QBs plus another QB plus another QB and stuff like that. You kind of want to build it on a lot more running backs because they're the ones that are going to get injured more than the QBs, to be honest. But I just wanted to sort of see if you had any sort of opinion on whether you thought either one of these QBs was going to be anything relevant towards fantasy and if you target them or anything. But
not hugely for me.
No, it's completely different considering the other 2 QBs that are in this division, and they're 2 that we talk about going really early in drafts and stuff. But we all know Pat Mahomes and what Pat Mahomes does, and even with the people in front of him, he still manages to finish as a top sort of 5 QB every year and everything like this. So I don't want to talk about him, but I want to talk about Justin Herbert. And there's a lot of people falling on Justin Herbert this year, and it was 12 months ago if that were people were chatting about him as a top 5 dynasty QB, and people were actually debating whether he's going in that top tier with the likes of Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and stuff like this. I remember them all having this conversation, and obviously he's dropping. But if you were to get Justin Herbert in your redraft team, what would sort of be the perfect start for you to be like, do you know what? I'm really, really happy with that start. I've got Justin Herbert as my starting QB. What would you rather? Would you rather him go in take him in the first round? What would you want in the second or the third? Or would you wait on him and go something else in the first? What would be your perfect start?
Yeah, if we're talking Superflex, there's no world in which I'm taking Justin Herbert in the first round this year. I would be quite happy with him as my QB2. I think he has, perfect elite upside as a QB2. I'm really struggling with him because it's the sort of thing where you look at the name and you go, that's Justin Herbert. Like, we know what he can be. But this next season is obviously going to be an issue when it comes to the system and it comes to the weapons around him. But last season wasn't great either. So a QB 17 finish in his last 7 full games, he had 4 of them with less than 13 fantasy points. And then when you look at some of the like actual metrics as well, so he finished 17th in average target depth. He finished 21st in completion percentage, 21st in yards per attempt as well. He also, across the last 4 seasons, has averaged the second most attempts per game. So when you look at kind of the volume has always been there for him across the last few seasons, which is not going to be this year. And we just really worry about the weapons there, as well as the system being more run heavy with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. So to me, in terms of like what my perfect start would be to take Justin Herbert, is no one taking him for a few rounds and I get him in the 4th as my QB2. And when I look at rankings as well, so he is currently, his ADP currently is QB 14. And it's the sort of thing that you look at that. It's actually very similar to when you look at Justin Jefferson and you go, well, he can't be, wide receiver 5. And then you go, okay, look at every single wide receiver ahead of him and figure if you'd rank him over them. And when I look at the quarterbacks above Justin Herbert, I can't see how I can put him ahead of them. So I do think he makes sense around that range. And then to me, that if he's QB 14, if he's going as QB 14, I can't justify taking him even in a Superflex league until about, the 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same wavelength as you here, to be honest. I think if I was going to take Justin Herbert, I think I'd want him as my QB2. I don't think I want him as my QB1. I think I'm asking too much, and I think I'm in a position where I'd need 2 of the high-end QB2s then in my team instead of, instead of waiting on that QB3, I'd be like, right, I'd need to go back-to-back QBs because I'd need 3 that are the same level that I can sort of just swap and change all 3 of them. Whereas I'd rather take an elite QB. So I'm just looking at a draft that I'm in now, and the guy that got Herbert in the 5th. This is a 10-man league. You got CJ Stroud in the 1st and Herbert in the 5th. I kind of like that, but I feel like it's quite risky.
Yeah.
Because yes, CJ Stroud was really good last year, but I think I'd probably rather a safer player like I don't know, like sort of a Dak Prescott kind of player.
Yeah, Goff.
I'd rather a bit of a
like
safe, a bit of a safer one. I think CJ Stroud is kind of risky. Will he replicate what he did last year and stuff like that? So, I think to me the perfect sort of scenario for Justin Herbert is he is my QB2, and if I could get him, I don't know, if I was maybe the guy that got Jalen Hurts, he got Jalen Hurts in the first, AJ Brown in the second, he went Caleb Williams in the third, but I think if I,
Wow.
if I could have taken somebody different there, like I don't know, for example, like a Travis Kelce or a Sam Laporta there, Chris Olave in the fourth, and then instead of Josh Jacobs in the fifth, that's when I would have probably gone Justin Herbert. And then you're going, I've got Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Travis Kelce, and Justin Herbert in my first
Yeah.
five picks. I think I'd be kind of happy with that, like
Yeah.
So I think that's how I'd rather play the Justin Herbert sort of minefield. I
I
think
agree.
you sort of have to, you look at the name, and like you said, you look at the name and you go, it's Justin Herbert. He's amazing. He's an elite QB, but actually, I think
Yeah.
realistically, he's a back end QB1, maybe a high end QB2 at best at the moment. But yeah, so we've had a little chat about QBs. Let's have a chat about running backs. Now, when you look at this division of running backs, there's only actually the Chiefs and the Broncos that have still got their starting running back still there. That's Javonte Williams and Isaiah Pacheco. Obviously, Josh Jacobs has left
Austin Eckler.
the Raiders. I was trying to think of the.
Okay.
I was like, who are they? The Raiders. They left the Raiders, and then Austin Eckler has gone from the Chargers. So, easy question for you, Lewis. Which running backs are you targeting from this division?
It's Pacheco for me. Like he's the only one that I'm actually targeting, that I'm actually interested in, or I'm going out of my way to draft. So ADP wise, he's going as RB14 off the board currently, and I think he definitely has upside of a low end RB1. He's obviously been there the last couple of years. Then when you look across the rest of the division, so Denver doesn't really interest me too much. They have actually an array of running backs in there now. So Javonte Williams, Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine's still in there. Like he's still going to get targets. He was one of the most targeted running backs in the league last year. And I just don't think the offense is good enough for any one of them to really take the job or be hugely fancy relevant to outperform their price. Zamir White could be interesting. His metrics were always really strong when he was the backup, and he did perform very well in relief of Josh Jacobs and when Josh Jacobs was injured as well. I'm just always very worried about the Tony Pollard situation and the Alexander Mattison situation, where there's a talented back behind a veteran starter, and then everyone's like, we can't wait for them to leave so they can be the full-time starter. And it just never fully works out. It's never worked out the way that we want it to. So he worries me. People are very high on him at the minute, and it's not someone that I'm like. It wouldn't surprise me if in 4 years' time, you get sort of trending tweets on Twitter of people being like, "Remember the one season that Zamir White finished as RB6?" Like, and he just become. Or do you remember that season that people were drafting Zamir White and then he'd never played again? Like. And he's just like this flash in the pan, then completely disappears. Like he worries me a little bit. LA is more interesting to me, and that we already spoke about the system. That obviously they're going to look to run the ball a huge amount, and it also then comes down to the cost. So the two presumed lead backs, there's also Kamani Vidal, who I know some parts of the Wildcard network are pretty high on. But the two who are sort of challenging have been brought over from Baltimore. So Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I'm interested in both of these. I'd say I'm probably drafting more Gus Edwards because even back when they were in Baltimore, Greg Roman used to rotate out J.K. Dobbins for Gus Edwards in the red zone. So Gus Edwards is a great goal line back. J.K. Dobbins is interesting to me, but I don't know how much I want to fall for the trap again. But like I said, the crucial thing is the cost. Gus Edwards is going as RB40. J.K. Dobbins is going as RB46. So there's value there. I'd be stunned if both of them don't perform. If they stay healthy, or let's say on a points per game basis, I'd be stunned if they don't outperform that value. Just because the cost is so low. Gus Edwards is definitely someone that I'm actually getting pretty happy auto clicking in every draft at the moment as my RB3.
Yeah, it's something that we talk about a lot, really, isn't it? The value, and that screams ultimate value there. If you're going to get Gus Edwards as RB40, you look at some of the players that you've drafted that have gone before him, and then you go, Gus Edwards, ultimately, yes, I know J.K. Dobbins is coming back from an injury, but Gus Edwards could quite easily see a full running back role in that Chargers offense, and we know Harburg is keen to run the ball and everything like this, and I just think it's one of them where his value is insane, and I suppose I agree with you in a sense that yes, we should. He is an easy click at the moment. Same as J.K. Dobbins, but I agree with you with J.K. Dobbins, but I'm probably going to have a lot less. I've been burnt way too many times with J.K. Dobbins, and I have him on a lot of teams where I'm sat there going, please, just be healthy, okay? Just be healthy, play 6 or 7 good games, and then I can flip you to somebody who's a challenging team for a pick and just go, your problem now. You can deal with him now. You know what I mean? And it's just... I just want that from J.K. Dobbins, but no, in redraft he is probably somebody I will have a few shares of, but not too many. But that's just a personal thing, we've all got these players where we've been burnt too many times with, and we want to get off that train. But yeah, so I agree with you that it is one of them, and Pacheco is probably one of the easy ones to choose from here. So let's move on to a couple of sleeper running backs. I don't get me wrong, I do think Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are kind of sleepers at RB40 and 46. But let's see if we can go a little bit deeper. There's a couple of rookies come into this one. We have mentioned one already, Kamani Vidal. Have you got any interest in... you're going to have to help me pronounce his name. Dylan Laub?
I think it's Laub, but I'm not convinced I've actually heard the name said out loud before.
Okay, so I just nailed it.
Yeah.
And I want to get his name in here. I know he's probably not going to see anything to do with any of... He's probably not even going to make the starting squad. But Louis Rees-Zammit, or Rees Lightning, as we like to call him here in Wales. Any interest in the Welsh lad who's going to be playing running back for the Chiefs this year?
I might draft him just because, as the fiance of a Welsh lady, so spending a lot of time around in South Wales and around her family, it will be very nice to be able to tell them that I've drafted a Welshman into my fantasy football squad. And it's an amazing story. Unfortunately, there's not special teams points in most leagues, so I don't think he's going to be particularly fancy relevant. The other two, I do have some interest in. So Dylan Laub is a really, really good satellite back. And has really strong foot speed and balance. He's relatively small, so the upside isn't hugely there with him, but in terms of how he then compares to Zamir White, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him. Also, Gardner Minshew had a tendency to check down because he's not hugely mobile. So last season, Zach Moss had multiple games with over 6 targets. He averaged about 3 or 4 a game, and Dylan Laub is a better receiver than Zach Moss is. Zach Moss was also obviously in a timeshare with Jonathan Taylor for the latter half of the season. So there's definitely opportunity there for him, and I think he's the best pass-catching running back on the team. So I definitely think there's a chance for him. Kamani Vidal is someone that a lot of people really liked. I wasn't hugely in on him, but there's a reason why he went in, I think, the 6th round. The NFL wasn't hugely on him either. What I would say about him is he's solid. He's good at lots of things, not great at any of them. I'm always nervous about, because for Dylan Laub to have to be fancy relevant this season, he needs to win half of a job. For Kimani Vidal to be relevant, he needs to win the whole job. He's not the best player, which means that it has to be volume. It has to be volume that he's getting. So he's reliant on injuries really to succeed. Whereas I think Dylan Laub probably could win the pass catching role just out of talent alone. So I think Laub for me is probably slightly more interesting. And I bet there are people listening right now absolutely furious that we've been pronouncing his name wrong for the whole time, or very proud of us for getting it right. But he's probably the one that I'm more interested in of the two.
I'm super proud of us for nailing it all night, to be honest. Yeah, I have slight interest in both of them. I think I want a share of each, just in case, you know. That's all I'm saying. Let's jump onto the wide receivers. I was quite shocked with this when I looked at the wide receivers in this division, because it's been such a competitive division, but the wide receiver rooms are not great, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I want to know about one room more than anything, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs room. Rice is having a lot of off-field issues and so much going on and everything like that at the moment. So there's always that thing, who do you want? Who do you want from the Chiefs? And I know they like to spread it out so everyone gets a bit of a ball, and Travis Kelce's normally the answer. But if there was a wide receiver from that Chiefs sort of team, who would you want?
Yeah, so I love Xavier Worthy. He was my wide receiver 4 all through the pre-draft process, which included pre-combine as well. And I really like his skill set. To me, it's Hollywood Brown. So Hollywood has only really produced since he's been in the NFL, and I feel like he gets slept on quite a lot. We don't seem to be hugely appreciative of how he's performed in the league. And I know it was quite rough in Arizona, but what wasn't rough in Arizona the last few seasons, especially with him without Kyler as well. And I think his skill set matches up so well with what the role he's going to play for Patrick Mahomes. And we've seen players coming off the street and be vaulted into fancy relevancy by playing with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, even just looking in the last few years, Juju Smith-Schuster was wide receiver 27 when he came in, and he didn't even play a full season. And Hollywood Brown is a way better wide receiver than he is. So I think, to me, it's him. I definitely want some shares of Worthy as well. Rookie wide receivers and taking them around the same cost worries me slightly. I think Hollywood, to me, is the one that I'm more interested in.
I think a lot of people are forgetting that Hollywood Brown is on that team.
Yeah.
I think like exactly what you're saying. People sleep on Hollywood Brown, and I think a lot of people are. I think people are still convinced that he's on the Cardinals. To be honest, I think people are still like, "Oh yeah, who are we going to take? Oh, Rashee Rice is out, so it must be Xavier Worthy or whoever,
Who else?
MBS or somebody like this, somebody that's still there." And it's like, they sort of just skip past it. And to me, Hollywood Brown, you'll remember the times where he's gone for a deep ball and he's, because of his speed, and it's just been launched downfield. I remember him doing it with Lamar, and he's caught a deep ball and run it in. And I think if they can unlock that again with the Chiefs, I think he could be of something that is quite relevant there. But let's move on to the Chargers, the other wide receiver room I wanted to chat about. The Chargers have let Keenan Allen go this year, Mike Williams go, and they obviously drafted Lad McConkey in, and they got QJ last year. So what are you doing with this receiving room? Who do you want?
Yeah, I mean, want is a strong word. Lad McConkey is interesting to me. So I do like Lad McConkey. I didn't feel like he was what they needed. He's a very versatile wide receiver, and I would have liked someone that was more of an alpha to step in, because I'm not convinced that Quentin Johnson can do that. Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer are interesting to me just because the ball's going to have to go somewhere. I think Josh Palmer is definitely being undervalued. So he's going as wide receiver 60 currently. And I think there's a very strong chance. Like, I think he could finish as a wide receiver 3. Quentin Johnson is still interesting to me. He's actually someone that I've been drafting a little bit this offseason in startups, because he was so bad year one that, like, yeah, the chances are he doesn't work out. But we all knew there was a lot of upside there when he was when he was in college, and the upside is still there. Like, he has a lot of work to do to reach it, but he has the highest upside of any wide receiver on the Chargers this season. He also his floor is being out of the NFL midway through the season, or being a practice squad player. So, like, it does worry me. If I was having to pay any sort of cost for Quentin Johnston, then I wouldn't be willing to do it. You are relying entirely on pre-draft takes and pre-draft hype, as opposed to anything you saw in the NFL, because everything you saw in the NFL was terrible. But give him another off-season with Justin Herbert, give him a bit more time in the wide receiver room with the coach to develop, and maybe there's something there. And if all you're having to do to get it is draft him as wide receiver 65, then I think you can stomach that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't think I want either of them, to be honest. I think everyone's expecting too much from Ad McConkey, and I think everyone's still going, QJ is a round 1 wide receiver. He's going to be fantastic. And I think everyone's expecting too much from these players this year. So I think, if I'm honest, I think that Chargers offense as a whole is a team that I'm going to kind of stay away from this year.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to feel great about them. But like you said, I'll probably take a shot on them somewhere. And if they do pan out, they do pan out. But we'll do a quick one on tight ends. There's not much to talk about. I don't want to sit here and talk about Travis Kelce because we talk about him so much. So simple question, yes or no answer. Do you have any interest in Brock Bowers in year 1?
No. If he was going later, then I would, but he's going as tight end 11 at the minute, and I worry about taking him that early. We'd spoken before about not hugely liking the fit for him in Vegas. Devontae Adams is going to get his, and I worry that there's not going to be a consistent enough volume for him, and there's a few players going after him that I think I prefer.
But as we've seen in the past, tight ends really hit year 1 anyway, and I think people are falling for that Pitts effect again. Brock Bowers is an elite talent and everything like this, and I agree. I think he is, and I think he's great for dynasty, but in redraft, I don't think he's going to be a elite tight end in his first year. So very little of Brock Bowers this year, to be honest. But Lewis, let's get on to the best division in football, the NFC West division, and we're going to start again with the QBs. Lots of good QBs in this division. You've got Kyler, you've got Brock Purdy, you've got Matt Stafford, you've got Geno Smith. I think they're all good choice QBs. But where would you be happy to draft these guys?
Yeah, and I'll let you come in on this as well. I'm stunned by Kyler Murray's ADP at the minute. So Kyler Murray in best ball is going as the QB 10. And if you look around last season, so obviously he missed the start of the season through injury. His pace when he came back, so I think it's week 10 through 17, he was on pace to finish as the QB 3. He scored 20.6 points per game in 6-point passing touchdown leagues. Like, that is absolutely elite. And we know, yes, there's not really anything on the receiving side aside from Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. But he still has Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, and he still has, he's one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd say probably top 3. He's a very unique player. The offense is unlikely to get worse. They brought in, let's say, the most hyped rookie wide receiver of all time, and we're still taking Kyler Murray as the QB10. That's ridiculous to me. I think there's when you look at the quarterbacks ahead of him. So we'll remove Anthony Richardson because that's obviously a very similar type of player. But C.J. Stroud, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love. I think there's a very real chance that he outperforms them. And I'm quite low on CJ Stroud last year because I actually look at his fantasy performance last year rather than his NFL performance. Kyler Murray is a huge target for me. I'll come on to the rest afterwards. But what are your thoughts on Kyler for fantasy in 2024?
So I've no comment about it because I'll just be a massive homer if I sit here and go, Kyler Murray's the best, and Hannah would be. But what I will say, Lewis, is to watch you gush over Kyler Murray in a Rams top has made my day. Okay. Oh, Kyler Murray's amazing. I love him in my Rams top, But no, getting back to the topic, it's very difficult for me to sit here and talk about Kyler Murray because people will go, "Oh, you're a homer" and everything like this. But I completely agree with you. I think when it comes to CJ Stroud, I love CJ Stroud. I've got a lot of CJ Stroud. I felt he was great value in rookie drafts, in dynasty, and everything like this. And I do think he is a good dynasty QB. I don't see it where people take him in a dynasty startup. I agree with where people take him in a redraft startup.
Yeah,
I completely disagree with.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's great as a franchise QB for your dynasty team and will be playing for the next 10 years and stuff like that. Do I see him finishing, repaying his value back now? No, I don't. And
No.
To be honest, mate, the draft I'm using is the Orkney Bowl. It's the charity draft. I'm in that one. So we had Josh Allen go first. We had Pat Mahomes second. I took Josh Allen first, by the way. Just
nice.
I was 101. Lamar Jackson went third. Jalen Hurts fourth. Completely agree with all four of them. CJ Stroud at 5. Don't like it. Anthony Richardson went on the turn. I love that pick. I like Anthony Richardson there. Don't like his wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, but again, is what it is. But then Joe Burrow went next. Think I'd prefer Kyler over Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott went next, and then all the way back at 210 on the turn for me, Kyler Murray. So I've got Josh Allen and Kyler Murray.
Unreal.
As my starting two QBs. And mate, you give me that all day, every day.
Yeah, 100%.
If I could get that on the one, if I could start any redraft draft this year at the 101 and walk away with Josh Allen and Kyler Murray all day, every day. And I will keep clicking it. And don't get me wrong, I don't like to have the same team too much. That's why I prefer to draft in different positions. So I've got different teams and stuff like that. But if I'm going to get the one again and I get Josh Allen and I get Kyler Murray again, I will click it all again. It all again. I think Kyler Murray is a steal where he is.
Great. Brock Purdy, I'm also very interested in. So Brock Purdy is going just after Kyler as the QB 11. I think he's very interesting to me. I do think that's probably about the right range. I think his ceiling is probably like QB 7 or QB 8. Then Stafford is also very interesting to me. So Stafford is sort of the other way around, that I'm not touching him I am touching him in Dynasty because he's very cheap, but he's probably only got a couple of seasons left at most. The ending to last season for Matt Stafford, it didn't start fantastically. He ended up finishing overall as I think it was the QB 15, but the ending to last season after the bye, QB 7, QB 8, QB 5, QB 12, QB 10, like that's the ceiling for Matt Stafford. We have two fantastic passing options, and there's definitely like a really high ceiling for him. And so for him currently going as the QB 19, I definitely think there's a good chance he outperforms that. Geno Smith, definitely the least interested in. I'm actually slightly worried about the Sam Howell pickup for them, or the Sam Howell trade for them, because I just think it indicates that they are it's even though he's being brought in as a backup and Gino is the starter, it indicates that the Seahawks aren't 100% convinced on Geno Smith, that they definitely think that if there's a high upside backup out there that they could coach up, they aren't against moving off of him. And I also I know not last season, but the season before, he suddenly had this breakout in his 10th season and finished, I think, as a QB5. Last season, QB19. I just don't think the upside is hugely there. And he played quite significantly worse last season as well. So it does just worry me a little bit with Gino. He's not someone that I'm hugely targeting.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking at his contract. So they've got out this year, haven't they? So
yeah,
it's there's just no commitment to him. So yeah, I agree. I think Sam Howell could. I think if they go on a couple of bad games, like a run of bad games, I think they wouldn't hesitate to flip him out and flip him in. And we know what Sam Howell's done. Look what he did at the Commanders. Yeah, he wasn't winning games, but actually he was a top QB because he was scoring plenty of points. It was he is somebody that he may be worth keeping an eye on waivers for. To be honest, Sam Howell, I think if you play the waiver game, I think he's somebody that if you see the Seahawks starting to struggle and a couple of weeks of losing games and stuff, it may be try and get a jump ahead of everyone, and maybe if you've got space, stash Sam Howell because he may come in as a starting QB. But yeah, let's move on to the running backs. Now there is quite clearly a running back that is above everyone else in this division, and that is CMC. And he is up there, and he is elite, and we're not going to talk about him because we speak about him too much, but let's talk about the others. Who are the other RBs that you target from the Cardinals, the Rams, or the Seahawks?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting division at running back because all of these teams now actually have two good players, two good running backs at the position. So there's actually a lot of depth there, with two of them having taken rookies this year and the Seahawks having taken a rookie last year, and the Rams and Cardinals taking the RB2 and 3 off the board as well. So not just taking rookies, but taking rookies on day 2 that are strong players. I think for redraft for this season, I'm definitely most interested in those established starters. So Kyren Williams, James Conner, and Kenneth Walker. But I can definitely see the argument for taking the rookies. So Kenneth Walker, I think, sort of stands on his own. That I think he's a better player than Zach Charbonnet. It was always a very strange pick. But then the Blake Corum one was as well. Kyren Williams, to me, I'm still taking him as kind of a top 5 or 6 running back, and I think he should be valued as such. People are worried a little bit because he's injured currently. He's going to miss a little bit of voluntary OTAs, but you shouldn't be interested. You shouldn't be interested in that.
I love the community blowing up about that straight away. Yeah. When it was like Kyren Williams has a foot injury, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's done." Blake Corum's running back 1 in the LA Rams and stuff, and you're like, chill, okay?
Yeah,
he is okay. Tank Dell got shot, and nobody's lost it with him.
Yeah,
Kyren Williams has a foot injury, and we're convinced that Blake Corum's going to be the running back 1.
We don't play football for 4 months. He's going to be fine. So if I can get Kyren Williams as the RB9 or 10 off the board, I'm delighted about it. Then James Conner and Trey Benson, and I'm intrigued as to your thoughts as to what you're hearing in terms of what they're going to do with these two players. I've always been in on James Conner. He's someone that I've always had a lot of because you can always get him relatively cheap. So currently ADP wise, he's going as the RB23, whereas Benson's the RB32. But Trey Benson was my RB1, and he's someone that I'm really interested in. So definitely, if there's a situation where I'm more interested in we'll call it backup with inverted commas because they're not full backups, it's running up by committees. But if there's a situation where I'm more interested in the second in the committee, it's definitely the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think the community are thinking that as well, and I think that's shown with the ADP. whereas you've got James Conner going quite late. Now, yes, okay, I don't think James Conner is anywhere near the level that Kyron Williams is, but you feel like people that are drafting James Conner they're then going, oh, do you know what? I'm going to take Trey Benson just in case.
Yeah.
So I've got whichever one is the workhorse. Now, I think they will. I think James Conner is in his last year.
Yeah.
So I think they will start with him running him into the ground and slowly integrate Trey Benson into it. And by the end of the season, I think if you see at the start, maybe sort of 70-30 Connor favor, I think by the end you see it the other way around and Trey Benson's the hot hand then, you know?
Yeah.
But I agree. I think they're the ones that are the closer confusion on which one you want than sort of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet or Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, you know. I'm glad you mentioned Blake Corum and Kyron Williams because I wanted to get your opinion on, you know, we've seen it with the Rams so many times where we're convinced we know who the one is.
Yeah.
And then Sean McVay goes, nah. He's gonna be our one. And we're just gonna play around with all of your heads and your fantasy teams and everything like that. Do you see an outcome where by the end of this season everyone could be a lot more in on Blake Corum than what we're making out at the moment?
Yeah, so there's a joke in the Rams community, which is that basically, in exchange for Sean McVay being one of the best coaches in the NFL, you just have to let him take a running back on day 2 every year. And that's what you have to get away with. Like when the Blake Corum pick went in, no one wanted it, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." Like a
But we've
couple of
got to pay the
seasons,
devil.
yeah, a couple of seasons before we had Cam Akers out of nowhere. The season before that, you had Darrell Henderson out of nowhere. Like, it's just what Sean McVay likes to do. And you know what? If that's what it takes in exchange for, you know, making playoffs and winning a Super Bowl, then fine, I'm happy with it. Yeah, I can definitely see it. Like, because of that Sean McVay, the way that he tends to lose his mind with running backs, and also because Kyron does have a little bit of an injury history. It was very interesting to me. We did speak about this before that they decided to go with a running back who has the same skill set as Kyler. That's a very similar, as Kyron, who's a very similar player, and whether you know that could be some worries about the foot injury or about the injury history, and they want someone who can just step in straight away. I don't think that it's a case of so I think the outcomes are either the Blake Corum pick is a wasted pick, or Kyron Williams ends up falling to the Cam Akers syndrome and Blake Corum is the established starter by the end of the season. Like, I think that's how. I don't think, because they're very similar, I don't think it's going to be a committee. I don't think it's going to be sort of 60-40. I think it's going to be 80-20, the same as anyone except CMC. Like every NFL team does that. And then if Kyron continues to get injured, then the 80% is going to be Blake Corum instead. Like, I don't think you're going to get sort of solid RB2 flex level production from Blake Corum. I think you're either going to get RB1 production or nothing.
I think as a community, if Sean McVay does that thing where Kyron Williams ends up with the Cam Akers effect, I think we all riot. Okay, we go down there and we all riot, like, you know, because it would just everyone would lose their minds again. You know, he's done it again. But yeah, let's get onto the wide receivers now. I've purposely set these questions out so I don't talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. because we know I love to talk about him.
Yeah.
But you know, the last division we spoke about, the AFC West had one of the worst divisions for wide receivers, and then you look at the NFC West and you look at the talent, you know, and there is so many good receivers here. And I want to know who you targeted, but just to name a few, you got DK Metcalf and JSN in Seattle. You've got Puka and Cooper in LA. You've got Debo and Ayuk in San Francisco, and then you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson.
I saw you pause there.
I had to pause because that is a bit of a drop down to the other
Yeah.
teams. But when you look at that as the wide receivers to choose from this division, it is quite a difficult, quite a difficult decision. But who are you targeting from each team?
Yeah. So to go team by team, and I could just say the thing that we say every episode, which is the cheaper one, and then move on. But to go team by team, Deebo Samuel is one of my favorite players in fantasy this season. He's going as wide receiver 15, just behind Brandon Ayuk at wide receiver 14. He is my most rostered wide receiver in best ball because I think he has an elite ceiling. And if I can get him outside of the second round, then I think that's really good value. I'm definitely targeting. I mean, the answer is Puka Nacua on the Rams, but you have to be drafting at the back end of the first to get him. So I'm definitely targeting Cooper Kupp. He's going as wide receiver 21. Even last season, it didn't feel great. He finished as wide receiver 40, and obviously, but he missed the first 4 games. Had a really rough stretch in the middle. The other games, he had a wide receiver. He finished at wide receiver 4 twice, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 18. Like, there is still an upside to him, and I think a fully healthy Cooper Kupp. Like, he was injured in the back end of the 2022 season, so he came in injured into the season, got injured again in camp, went on to PUP. Like, it wasn't a strong start for him. Then when I go to Seattle, I'm really interested in JSN. I've been drafting a lot of JSN. He's going as wide receiver 45. Now, obviously, it wasn't the season that we wanted for him as a rookie. When he came in as the first first rookie wide receiver off the board, finished as wide receiver 48. So it wasn't really what we wanted. And there wasn't really, he didn't finish inside the top 15 at all. But we knew he was going to struggle in year one because we knew there was going to be a lot of target competition there. And I think another year in the system, and most importantly, another year in Tyler Lockett's legs. I definitely think there's scope for him to have a much more improved season. So he's definitely someone that I'm targeting when he's going all the way down at wide receiver 45. Like, he's of interest to me. Michael Wilson is someone that I am actually really interested in. So there's a huge amount of vacated targets in Arizona this season, 185. And yes, you've had obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in. But Michael Wilson had the 15 highest yards per target in 2023. He had the 26th highest yards per reception. He had 26 plays of more than 10 yards. And he's basically free at the minute. So he's going as the wide receiver 67. I think he's a really solid deep threat. I think he's a good outside wide receiver. I think he's definitely a best ball target because he's going to have a few games where he explodes, or just has a long deep touchdown. But not all of those targets can go to Marvin Harrison Jr. They have to throw the ball to someone else, and it looks likely to be Michael Wilson at the moment. He seems to be a little bit of a wild card favorite, but yeah, he's definitely someone that I'm interested in for this season.
Yeah, I remember. So we drafted him last year, and I remember people were talking about him last year, and they were saying he got injured in college, didn't he? And I think people were saying if he didn't get injured in college, he would have been somebody that you'd have been talking about as one of the top wide receivers in last year's wide receiver class. And so I think he just needs that bit of confidence, bit of everything, and then maybe we can see this wide receiver that people were talking about that he was there before college. So yeah, what you've done is exactly what I expected you to do. You've picked the cheaper one, apart from Deebo, who is probably the most expensive one in the 49ers room. But I totally get it with Deebo because you can see anything come out of him. You can actually see him rush for a touchdown. I think Deebo is he's a Swiss Army knife, isn't he? Really, and I do agree with you that his upside is a wide receiver 1 on the season. You know what I mean? I think he does have that.
Wide receiver 1 overall for sure.
Yeah, he does have that in his locker. JSN, I agree with. He was my one of my flag plants last year on the Wildcard Dynasty show. Michael Wilson, again, I think is great. But Cooper Kupp, I want to talk about Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is somebody that a few years ago was the wide receiver that everyone wanted on their team and would give up everything to go and get him on their team. And obviously, injuries hasn't helped that. Then Puka having the greatest rookie wide receiver season that we've ever seen and everything like this. And all of a sudden, Cooper Kupp's value has like plummeted. I would say plummeted like really bad, but I suppose it's not that bad because he's still, going quite high in drafts as in like the top sort of 20 wide receivers around that mark, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you did sort of just talk about it, but have you any interest in him this year?
Yeah, so I did a long form article, a little bit of a deep dive into Cooper Kupp as part of my Old and Stinky series. And yes, there's been a downturn for him, but it's more due to Puka Nakua's breaking out. So this is the 17 game pace from when Cooper Kupp returned so looking at his points per game were 13.7, which is actually really strong. So in terms of PPR finish in 2023, it would have been wide receiver 25, which is decent considering that he was coming back from injury and also had a really long stretch where it wasn't great at all. But one of the biggest positives for him is that everything's going to stay the same going into next year. You also have there were lots of reports they were targeting Brock Bowers or Romadunze. They didn't bring in, another offensive weapon. It's just Demarcus Robinson again. So I don't think Kupp is dead just yet. And I think the 1A, 1B role with Puka Nacua will definitely continue to be the same. We know that he has an elite connection with Stafford. He, again, I don't think wide receiver 1 is within his range of outcomes, but would it surprise anyone if Cooper Kupp finishes the wide receiver 3 next season? I don't think so. And he's going as wide receiver 21, so you can get him as your wide receiver 3 and have someone with still that elite upside.
So I've got a question for you, okay? And I know we haven't got long left, stuff like this. Who do you think has a better chance as finishing the wide receiver 1 overall in 2024? Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson?
I would still say Justin Jefferson. It relies upon JJ McCarthy being good quickly. But if all you have to do is be as good as Kirk Cousins, Kirk's good, but he's not, a top 10 quarterback, I think you could get that level of play out of him. So I do still think it's Justin Jefferson. But I think my honest answer is that neither of them do. But I think probably Justin Jefferson. But it's an interesting question.
But that's exactly the point I wanted to make. What I wanted to make is I don't think either of them finish as the wide receiver 1. But I wanted people to think about actually we're drafting Cooper Kupp so much further back. But when you go, who's got a chance of finishing as a wide receiver 1? Justin Jefferson, who's going as wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4.
Yeah.
Or Cooper Kupp, who's going as wide receiver 20. Now, Cooper Kupp has got Matthew Stafford with him. He has a connection with him. Matthew Stafford has helped Cooper Kupp finish as the wide receiver 1 many times before. Justin Jefferson has JJ McCarthy, who, according to X, is not having the easiest of times in training camp and stuff like that, And it's all about, I want people to realize that there is that, yes, okay, I do think it is. I agree with you. Justin Jefferson has got a better probability, but I don't
there's
think
a debate.
Yeah, I don't think it's too far out of the question to go Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford could finish as the wide receiver 1 this year, and it wouldn't shock anyone. It literally wouldn't shock anyone. I don't think anyone would go, didn't see that coming. Now, if you saw Michael Wilson finish as a wide receiver 1, everyone would be shocked. But you know what I mean? But I just wanted to ask that sort of question where these things can happen, and also be cautious with Justin Jefferson. You're taking him at 3 or 4. That's his ceiling. That's him hitting his ceiling,
Yeah.
But But yeah, so one more question. Oh, excuse me. Trey McBride, George Kittle are the only tight ends that I really, really would consider in this division. And I know Hannah would chat with me because she hates George Kittle and she would say, no, I don't want him at all. But just quickly, are there any other tight ends in this division that you would quite like to have shares of?
I wish we didn't have to finish on tight end because the wide receiver discussion is so much more exciting in this division. No, I'm slightly interested in Noah Fant just because you've lost Will Disley and Colby Parkinson, so there's potentially more targets there, but the upside's tiny. Tyler Higbee would be interesting if he was healthy. Colby Parkinson or Davis Allen will get some targets. Davis Allen, maybe very late on as a tight end 3 in best ball drafts, is slightly interesting as a second year tight end, but the answer is no.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I just think Trey McBride, George Kittle. Again, I think I'm going to speak on Hannah's behalf here. George Kittle is only somebody that I'd be targeting in best ball because he has up and down weeks, and 1 week he could be 30 points, the next week he could be 2. So I'd be targeting more best ball. But Trey McBride is, in my honest opinion, he is the second choice receiver in this team. And he is exactly what you want in a tight end, somebody who's going to see plenty of targets, plenty of everything, and he is a great tight end. But yeah, with that brings us to the end of the show and the end of our divisional previews. Join us next week where we've got a special guest coming on, and we'll be chatting everything fantasy football with him. And in the meantime, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on X at Wildcard Rewind. Head on over to our YouTube channel, search for us at Fantasy Wildcard, and make sure you give us a like and a subscribe over there. And guys, we will see you next week.